Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. During this talk, phones off please. No photos please, either professional or amateur. No videography, and please listen. Sri Vishnu Sahasranama, name 922, is Punya-Shravana-kirtana, which is very suitable for a Shravan Kirtan camp to speak on this name, Punya-Shravana-kirtana. As a name, it means he regarding whom hearing and chanting, and not taking photographs when you're asked not to, please. He regarding whom hearing and chanting is pious, not ordinary piety. Punya. Punya, this is generally understood to mean the kind of good activity which will give you good karmic results in future. The punya means that which is purifying, that which is auspicious. Materialistic people, of course, I'm talking about within Hindu culture here, because you don't have the word punya. So within Hindu culture, the word punya is understood to mean, generally understood, because most people are karmis, they're interested in what they can get out of doing religious activity. Do some pious activities now and you'll get good results in future, and it will cancel out bad things that you have done. So auspiciousness in terms of materialistic people's understanding is that which cancels out the sinful reactions and gives you, sets you up for good reactions in future. Piety is also called sukriti. Pious activities are called sukriti. The result of that is called punya. Sukriti, that which is done well. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has analyzed that there are three kinds of sukriti, so different kinds of piety. That is bhoganmukhi, that which pertains to material enjoyment. So do some pious activities now and you'll get pious results. You'll get results in future, such as Janma Aishvarya Shruta Shri, birth in a good family. In our egalitarian age, there's no consideration of good family, but previously there was aristocracy, the person who, or the family who constructed a castle here, we heard in the 13th century, first of all, must be from an aristocratic family. So birth in a good family, which generally means a rich family, although not necessarily, because a good family can mean a Brahmana family who are not rich, but they are religiously elevated. I didn't say spiritually elevated. In terms of religious practice, elevated. To be educated, intelligent and educated, and bodily beauty and strength. So these are considered four main factors of the results of pious activity, the bhoga, that which is enjoyable in this world. So that's one kind of sukriti. And there are so many digging wells for or ponds so that the public may avail of water supply, supplying water to drinking water especially in the hot season. You may have seen in Vrindavan, there are people who sit with a copper pot with a spout and give water for drinking. So that's considered, to fund that is considered a pious activity. To visit holy places. These are all pious activities, which people generally perform with the consideration that I will get enjoyment in future. Then there is mokshanmukhi, sukriti. There's similar kind of activities performed or for the sake of attaining liberation from this material world. Similar activities are more likely performing austerities, living in a holy place connected with liberation. There are different kinds of holy places. Those connected with liberation, the Sapta Moksha Puris, the 7 places which give liberation if you die in them. Studying Vedanta, especially those who desire mukshu, those who desire liberation, they especially desire to study the Vedanta commentary by Shankaracharya and his followers. And there's Bhakti Unmukhi Sukriti, which is different in as much as it helps us to come to the platform of devotional service. And that may be done even unknowingly. That is called Agyata Sukriti. For instance, if a living being in the body of a dog takes Krishna Prasad, eats some Krishna Prasad, he doesn't know that it's a purifying activity, but still he gets a result which will lead him to that living being to eventually come to devotional service. So in this context, Punya-Shravana-kirtana, the name means to hear and chant about Krishna, is pious for all kinds of piety, but it is especially recommended and especially undertaken by persons who want to come to the platform of serving Krishna. Many people have many ideas about pious activities, and there are many pious activities recommended in the Vedic scriptures. But even persons who desire material enjoyment or who desire to be liberated from this world, they should know that the best way they can achieve this is by worshipping Krishna. There's a verse in the Bhagavatam in this regard which begins with the word akama. Good, very good. Who can say the whole verse? Okay, say it. Yajeta Purusha Param. Whether one has no material desires, which means he's already on the platform of devotional service, or has unlimited material desires, or desires liberation from material desire but doesn't desire to serve Krishna, but desires to be free from this material world, such a person is recommended to intensely worship Krishna, intensely undertake the process of Bhakti Yoga to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So all kinds of people are recommended to undertake Shravan and Kirtan of Krishna, hearing and chanting about Krishna. But that will especially be undertaken by devotees. And of course there are different kinds of devotees also. There are some devotees who perform devotional service for the sake of material enjoyment. And they can get it. Hearing and chanting about Krishna is commonly undertaken. If you've been to Vrindavan and Govardhan and all these places, well, you wouldn't understand because all the posters are written, these kind of posters are written in Hindi. But there's so many advertisements for this Bhagavat Saptaha, hearing this, coming and sitting for 7 days and hearing from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's not like our Bhagavatam classes, they're different. They go through, in 7 days they go through all the pastimes, mostly through the pastimes, and there's a lot of stress on, well, at least it used to be, it may have changed now, a lot of stress on Krishna's intimate pastimes. But people attend this with the idea, generally people attend these with the idea that this will be pious, I'll get a good result, I'll get they're not devotees, they're devotees, but their idea of devotion, if they haven't heard from a pure devotee, their idea of devotion is going to be mixed up with the idea of material enjoyment and liberation from this material world, but not even much about liberation. They're mostly interested in pious enjoyment in this material world. But you can get it. You can get anything you want from Krishna. He is a kalpa vriksha. He is the desire tree. Whatever we get from Krishna anyway. So if we approach him directly, we can get. But then the result of if we actually hear Bhagavatam with all its verses, we should, from someone who has heard in the disciplic succession and is a pure devotee of Krishna, then we'll get the message that we're not supposed to enjoy this material world. We're supposed to surrender to Krishna. And Bhagavatam starts off with that very declaration. You may be surprised to know that this name Punya-Shravana-kirtana is a name of Vishnu. It's one of the names in Vishnu Sahasranama. These Shravan Kirtan camps, regularly devotees connected with myself are organizing in different parts of the world. We do quite regularly in Sri Rangam in South India. An ancient place of Vaishnav culture, and going there regularly, we've come to know some of the Vaishnavas from ancient Vaishnav families there. So about 2 years ago, I was doing a Shravan Kirtan camp. I was speaking with, he's generally known as the head priest, although not anyway. And he mentioned about, he was saying having a Shravan Kirtan come, and he said, Punya-Shravana-kirtana. So he knows very well, still, Brahmanas in South India, they both Vaishnava and non-Vaishnava, it's very common, they will recite Vishnu Sahasranama. So they're all they know this term, Punya-Shravana-kirtana, as a name of Vishnu. And probably most ISKCON devotees don't know that it is a name of Vishnu, but they know very well the term Punya-Shravana-kirtana from a verse of Bhagavatam, Shinvatang Swakata Krishna Punya-Shravana-kirtanaha Hridantasto Hiabhadrani Vidhunoti Surit Satam. Srila Prabhupada translates Shrinvatam, those who have developed the urge to hear the message of. Just now in Srila Prabhupada's room, we heard about the 6 urges. Choi Bega Dami, control my 6 urges. We have these urges. The first is Vacho Vegam, to speak. The urge to speak is very good if we have the urge to speak about Krishna and the urge to hear the message. Swakata, his own words. Krishna, Srila Prabhupada translates this here as the personality of Godhead. Punya, virtues. Shravana, hearing. Kirtanaha, chanting. Hridi, anta, staha, within one's heart. That's a very big topic of discussion. What is within the heart? Within the heart, there is the region within which the Supreme Lord resides. It's discussed in some detail in the Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad. But what do we have there now? He certainly, abhadrani, that which is inauspicious. So punya means that which is auspicious. Punya, bhadra, these are synonyms. So abhadrani, all that is inauspicious. That's how Uh, that's translated in the next verse. So Srila Prabhupada translates this here in the word-for-word translation. Desire to enjoy matter. Vidhunoti, cleanses. Suhrit, benefactor. Satam, of the truthful. And then the whole verse translation. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee. It's very, you see, each word has so much, either in Sanskrit or in English, has so much import. The truthful devotee. Then again we come to the beginning of Bhagavatam. Dharma Kaitava. What is that verse? Dharma Kaitava Projita Atra. Herein, Atra, cheating in the name of Dharma. Which may seem very strange. Dharma, cheating, they seem to be the opposite thing. Dharma project, projita, completely thrown out. Dharma projita kaitava atra paramo nirmadsaranam satam. So the truthful devotee, the one who has no envy of others, or he should be at least cultivating these qualities, the one who at least desires to come to this platform, they should hear and chant about Krishna. From the benefactor of the truthful devotee cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. There's so much could be said here, so much could be unpacked from this, from the heart of the devotee. Then again we come to Cheto Darpana Marjanam, cleaning the heart, the first effect of engaging in Sankirtan, cleanses the heart. The desire cleanses the desire for material enjoyment. The impersonalists or the Buddhists have the idea, get rid of all desire. Stop desire. Buddha analyzed, this world is full of suffering. Suffering is caused by desire. Stop desire. But here, Srila Prabhupada has translated. Actually, if we examine the Sanskrit, if we want to make an absolutely literal translation, abhadrani, it's non-specific. It simply means that which is not auspicious. All things which are not auspicious, plural form. But Srila Prabhupada translates this. He comes to the specific. Cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear. So that urge to hear, that is, I've got to do it, which are in themselves virtuous. All you have to do is hear and chant. When properly heard and chanted. Again, we won't find exactly the word properly within the Sanskrit, but Srila Prabhupada has put this to clarify, to make the point. It's not that you can go to this Bhagavat Saptaha with a desire for material enjoyment and listen from a person with a desire for material enjoyment. It's not a mechanical thing that just by somehow or other that sound will be there. And if you don't want to be desired, you don't want to be freed from material desire, that won't happen. But if we hear from a person who is following the path of Shukdev, who is without desire for material enjoyment, then even if we have desires for material enjoyment, and even if we don't want to be free from desires for material enjoyment, the effect of purification will be there. Which is why we often see that materialistic people, they don't like to hear when pure devotees speak. Pure devotees here means those who speak properly the message in parampara as it has been heard. And this may be something of a quandary for us who are enjoined to preach Krishna consciousness, because we want many people to come and hear the message of Krishna, but we don't find many are coming. So we may just change it a little to make it more interesting for materialistic people. But the problem is that when we do that, what interests them will not purify them. What they need to hear is not what they want to hear. It becomes a quandary. Actually, it's not a quandary if we just go on speaking what they need to hear. And we don't give what they want to hear. Of course, there is the consideration of sugar-coated pills. There is also the method of giving them a lot of prasadam, which will also help to prepare them for hearing. But it may take many lifetimes before someone is ready to listen to this message. It's not an easy message to hear. Listening is easy. Hearing is easy. Even if you don't want, if you're in proximity of the sound, you'll hear it. Unless we put earplug. Sometimes we see on Harinam Sankirtan people will run away with their fingers. You know very well, right? You do Sankirtan in London. But it's too late. They already heard. So it's a good process. But to get people to come to the platform of hearing this message, Nayang deho deha bhajang nriloke kashtan kam anarhate virbhujange tapo divyam putraka satvad shuddhyam dyasmat brahmasokyam tvanantam. We're telling them here you're going to have unlimited spiritual happiness, but just stop living like a pig. We heard this morning. You're like a pig. And everyone left. They weren't ready to hear that they're living like pigs. Actually, what we heard this morning, Janananda Maharaj at his first preaching program, the preacher told everyone, you're just like pigs. And they all left. They weren't ready to hear it. So it may require some expertise to convince people that they should stop living like cats and dogs and pigs and stool-eating animals. It may not be the first thing we say, but they should hear. We see Shukadeva at the beginning of his speaking to Parikshit Maharaj, the very first thing he said, it was meant for cutting any material attachment, in case Parikshit thought that, or others who were sitting there listening, thinking, well, we may not want to listen to this. And Shukadeva spoke very strongly. If you are simply a griha medhi, interested in spending your days working very hard, maintaining your family, kutumba bharanena, and your nights in sleep and sex indulgence, if that's all you're interested in, then you won't be ready to hear these topics of Atma Tattva, subject matter of the soul. So this whole thing, properly heard and chanted, is a very big topic. But I'll go on to discuss Punya-Shravana-kirtana from another angle. It's a very important name for us in this material world and who need to hear and chant about Krishna, and for those who are beyond birth and death, for those who have already developed pure love for Krishna, then Shravan Kirtan comes to them automatically. And those who have crossed beyond birth and death and who are not devotees of Krishna, they will also be attracted to hear and chant about Krishna. And the great example of that is Shukadeva Goswami, regarding whom Shonak Rishi asked Sutta Goswami, well, how is it that this Shukadeva, he was already liberated, then why did he undertake the study of such a huge huge work as Srimad Bhagavatam? Why did he do that? If he's already liberated, and what's the answer? Atma Ramas Chamunaya. You should know the context also. Nigranta apyurukrame kurvantya haitu king bhaktim itam bhuta gurno harehe. The qualities of Krishna are so attractive that they attract the minds even of persons who are already liberated from material existence and who take pleasure in the self. So this Shravan-kirtan is so important in our spiritual life. Many verses in the Bhagavatam attest to this. I'll just chant one of them. Shrinvanti gayanti grinantya bhikshnasha smaranti nandanti tave hitang janaha ta eva pashyantya chirena tavakam bhavapravaho paramang padambujam. Kunti Devi, after glorifying Krishna with beautiful verses, which we, to this present day, we hear and chant about, Shravana-kirtana. She said, summarizing the whole matter of her, what she said, O Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities, or take pleasure in others' doing, certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. To get a fuller understanding of why this Shravan Kirtan is punya, this hearing and chanting about Krishna, is pious activity, purifying activity. We understand this Bhakti-unmukhi Sukriti. It is purifying. This Bhoga-unmukhi Sukriti. The pious activities which lead to material enjoyment, they do not they purify on one level. They can help to purify us from sinful results. They can help to purify us from, to some extent, from the desire for sinful activities. And we see people who are raised in a pious atmosphere, then naturally they don't want to, they may not be devotees, they may be materially pious. It may be hard for you to imagine if you've only lived in France in this lifetime. But there are people who are materially pious. They don't eat meat, they don't take alcohol or any intoxication, maybe tea or coffee, but not any serious, hardcore intoxication. They're pious people. They respect sadhus, they chant verses from Gita, pious people. But they have the desire for material. Their whole idea is we'll live a good life. In this life we'll give charity, and then we'll have in the future life a good life, and they may get also. But their piety does not purify, because it purifies them in the sense that they don't indulge in sinful, they don't have the inclination for sinful life. They don't have that overt, manifest desire for engagement in sinful life. But it doesn't purify them from the deep-rooted desire to enjoy this material world. Whereas hearing about Krishna, it purifies the desire for material enjoyment. So a fuller understanding of this verse this Srinvatang Swakata Krishna Punya-Shravana-kirtana. We need to see it in the context of the verses preceding it and following it, because it is in a series of verses which, near the beginning of Bhagavatam, establish how Krishna consciousness is above and beyond Varnashram considerations and the perfection of engagement in Varnashram activities, and then goes on to explain these verses, this series of verses, go on to explain the effects of pure devotional service to Krishna based on hearing and chanting about Krishna. So I'll read some of these verses from the second chapter of Bhagavatam, first canto, with Srila Prabhupada's translations. Atah Pumbir Dvijashreshtha Varnashrama Vibhagashaha Swanushthitasya Dharmasya Sangsiddhir Haritoshanam. O best among the twice-born, it is therefore concluded, and to understand what therefore means, you have to see the verses before that. It is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste divisions and orders of life is to please the personality of Godhead. That might be quite a lot to digest simply by hearing it. We're more used to reading. If you read it, you can absorb that maybe better than by hearing, because it's one verse translation, it's one sentence, and there are a lot of important concepts in there. I'll read it again. You can try and focus in and try to understand more. But again, every verse, we're talking about hearing and chanting about Krishna, and every verse of Bhagavatam has so much depth. O best among the twice-born, it is therefore concluded. In other words, this is not just some idea, or it's not a step in a progression of activities, but in concerning the highest perfection that one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation, according to caste divisions and orders of life, is to please the personality of Godhead. In other words, the whole Vedic culture, the Varnashram system, the perfection of acting in the Varnashram system, which generally it's thought that you should be a good Brahmana, you follow your duties. And Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, you should follow your duties as a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. But the ultimate perfection of all of that is to please the personality of Godhead. And then the question may come, well, how do you please Him? We have the answer in the Vishnu Purana, Varnashramacharvata Purushena Parapuman, Vishnu Aradhyate Panta Nanyat Tato Shakaranam. By worshipping Vishnu while following the Varnashram system, one can achieve all perfection. There's no other way, but specifically here in Bhagavatam, we come to this specific understanding of how he is pleased. Tasmad ekena manasa bhagavan satvatang patihi shrotavya kirtitavyascha dheya pujascha nityada. Therefore, with one-pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. So here we have Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha, hearing and chanting about. The name we're discussing now is Punya-Shravana-kirtana. These two processes are particularly emphasized, but even though it's said that you can achieve all perfection by one of them, by concentrating on one of them, and the example of hearing is Parikshit, The example of chanting is who? Lord Chaitanya, Shukadev, who wasn't performing Nama Kirtan as such, but he was glorifying Krishna by speaking the Bhagavatam. So puja, by meditating upon, by performing puja, which Srila Prabhupada translates here as worship, by all these activities. So all these activities, they're interdependent, and generally devotees, they may concentrate on one, but the whole process of bhakti yoga involves all the processes. But importance is always given to hearing and chanting about Krishna. The next verse in this series from the Bhagavatam, Yad anudhyasina yukta karma granti nibandhanam chindanti ko vidas tasya ko na kuryat kataratim. With sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work, karma, by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? Again, a lot of important considerations here. You're thinking how to get free from the knots of karma, how to get liberated from material existence. We're reminded of the example from Alexander the Great of cutting the Gordian knot. How can you untie such a complex knot? All the complex desires in our hearts interlinked, going back unlimited lifetimes. How do you untangle? Try to untangle it, and you get just more and more tangle. Maybe you've had experience with a knot like that. Sometimes those have Brahmin threads, and you get a new one, and you try to untangle it, and you get stuck, and you just get more and more tangled. But the desires in our hearts are far more complex. You try to pull something here, and then it gets tangled on the other side. How do you cut it? You can't. Well, with the Brahmin thread, it becomes useless then. But with material desires, they're anyway useless. So you cut through it. How can you cut through that? By remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? And we say, well, then how do you get kataratim? How do we get that strong desire, that urge to hear? That comes in the next verse. Susrusho shadadhanasya vasudeva kata ruchihi syan mahat sevaya vipra punya-tirtana shevanat. O twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. So we should start, we're talking about serving Krishna, we should start off by serving the devotees, and the devotees will engage us in the service of Krishna. And by serving devotees, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Then we come to this verse, Shrinvatang swakata Krishna Punya-Shravana-kirtana hridyantasto hi bhadrani vidhunoti suhrit satam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. And how does that cleansing the desire for material enjoyment, and how does that happen? How does that develop into katarati, the strong attachment to hearing? That is described in the next few verses in this series of verses from Bhagavatam. Nashta prayesh vabhadreshu. Again we have abhadrani and abhadreshu. Nashta prayesh vabhadreshu nityang bhagavata sevaya. Bhagavatyutama shloke bhakti bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. And often devotees ask, well, why is it only almost completely destroyed? Why not fully destroyed? And then we have to go on to read the next verse and the verses that follow. Tadarajastamo bhava kamalo bhadayaschaye cheta etar anavidham stitam sattve prasidati. As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness, and he becomes completely happy. So it's a progression. Evang prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yoga taha bhagavad tattva vijnanang mukta sangasya jayate. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. You're going to have to go back and read these, because it is so much to absorb and understand, so many important terms here. That's why again and again, Nityang Bhagavata Sevaya, we have to go again and again over these topics to absorb and understand what this is all about. Vidyate hridaya grantis chidyante sarva sangshayaha kshiyante chasya karamani drishta evatmanishvare. Thus the knot in the heart is pierced, and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees oneself and one's master. In the Bhagavatam for many years we had when one sees oneself as master, and recently it's been altered to and sees oneself and one's master. Drishta evatmanishvare. When one see, if we want to literally translate well, it could be taken in various ways, right? The master of the Atma. Ato vai kavayo nityang bhaktim paramayamuda vasudeve bhagavati kurvantyatma prasadinim. Certainly, therefore, since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering devotional service to Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, with great delight, because such devotional service is enlivening to the self. There's a lot more to say. Of course, the whole Bhagavatam can be quoted to unpack this name Punya-Shravana-kirtana, but for what we may call practical considerations, to explain this name, instead of reciting the whole Bhagavatam, we have to select some portions. But I have selected some portions to speak about on, but I'm not going to speak more now, and Krishna willing, I will continue to speak on this tomorrow morning. There was a question put to me by Jivana, which is an upcoming name in Vishnu Sahasranama, the name Jivana, about, well, how do we fully surrender and then have full love for Krishna? Very good question. Here's your answer. Go on hearing and chanting about Krishna. Do not think that this chanting and dancing will not lead to the desired result. Srila Prabhupada writes, it will. In that same section he says that the aim of this Krishna conscious movement is to join the Supreme Lord in his pleasure dance. So go on with the process, emphasizing on hearing and chanting, the result will come. It may take time. There's a progression. Tada, at that time, there comes a time when tada rajastamo bhava kama lobhadayasche cheta etar anavidham sitang sattve prasidati. There comes a time when all the dirty things in the heart are cleansed out and one is situated in pure goodness, pure devotional service. Hare Krishna. We'll finish for now. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Dante nitaya churnakang padayo nipatya kridva chakaku shatam etad aham bravimi. He sadhava sakala eva vihaya durad goranga chanda charne kurutanuraga. Parivadatu jano yata tata va nanumakaro navayang vicharayamaha. Hari rasa madira madati mata bhuvi vilutama nartama nirvishama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.